After more than a decade of €1 homes in Italy, have they actually accomplished the goals that were originally put in place? For those of you who are just looking for the quick response, my opinion is no, they have not yet accomplished the goals that they set. But for those of you who may actually be curious as to the why, stick around for the rest of this episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter. I'm Rafael Di Furia. Roll that intro. Some of the biggest reasons why the €1 home projects were created was because there were various municipalities in Italy that were looking to rejuvenate, revitalize, and bring people into their communities. And while I do think that they accomplished some of those goals, I think one of the most important goals has yet to actually come to fruition. But before we get too deep into the episode, I think for those who are maybe a little bit less familiar with the €1 projects, the €1 homes that you find in Italy, it's important to clarify that the homes that are being offered aren't always €1, that it's kind of a category. And maybe in some cases, the home actually does cost €1 for the cost of the property itself. But there are going to be other programs that are made available in the country that are €1 as the opening bid. It could be one, it could be the other. There's no central singular program for all of these. So what you'll find is that one village may do it one way, one village may do it another way, and it will very much depend. And so that's why also if you're looking for €1 homes, it's hard to find central listing sites that have these available. And you also find that different towns and villages will have different requirements for their projects and what you have to actually accomplish and when you have to accomplish it. And let's say even you can get one of these homes for actually just a singular euro. That is, like I said, going to be the cost of the property itself. But you may have a few thousand or multiple thousands on top for taxes, processing fees, even dealing with a real estate agent. If you have to deal with an agent, there may be hundreds of euros on top of the purchasing price that instead of spending like €1, maybe you have to spend 5,000 euros for kind of maybe on the lower end. But what's also not uncommon is that you'll have to present a project and apply for the home and what you want to do with it and how you want to use the space. So not only are you going to be buying a property that may be literally rubble, but you also have to present a project. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to live there? Are you going to turn it into an Airbnb? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? To me, from the original outset of what this projects were supposed to be, I didn't understand why that there were some places that were saying that you could actually turn your place into a commercial property, into an Airbnb. That kind of almost seems to defeat the purpose a little bit. Again, just my opinion here, like every other episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter. This is just a guy with a microphone who's lived in Italy and lived abroad for quite a while, and these are some of my thoughts, having had boots on the ground. But in some of the cases where you may actually be starting out with a €1 bid, then it could be that the home that you're going to be bidding on would end up in a silent auction and end up going for 5, 7, 10,000, 20,000 euros. It's going to depend on the popularity of the village. Well, I mean, let's be real here. The popularity, that's one of the reasons why so many people are leaving these places, is because there has been such a lack of growth in these places. For those of you who've been watching Not Your Average Globetrotter for a while, you'll know I've had some skepticism in regards to these €1 projects. I think they're really interesting, but I think a lot of people enter into these maybe with the wrong mindset, because you have to remember why. That is the biggest question that you have to answer for yourself. And the answer to that question is going to determine whether it's appropriate for you or not. Why are these houses for sale? Why have they been abandoned? Why do the current owners not want to deal with having to take care of them? In some cases, it could be that they're just not interested in paying the property taxes. And also keep in mind, if there are any back taxes owed on any of these properties, that as the new owner, that actually could fall onto your shoulders. So yeah, maybe you're getting a house for €1 plus tax, plus fees, plus registration, plus maybe a bunch of back taxes on top. It's not going to be the case for every single situation. And I'm definitely, as always, painting with a very broad brushstroke here, but I'm talking about some of the realities and some of the concerns that I have and why personally I would say maybe even going in a very different direction, but not avoiding Italy would maybe be the best choice. One of the biggest concerns that I've also had over the years is if these projects have been kind of presented in such a way that, wow, this is an amazing investment opportunity. You have to get it on it now. You're going to make your money back and you're going to this and you're going to that, blah, 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 blah. Kind of like a little bit of a hype project, so to speak. And I would say, generally speaking, these are going to be properties that you definitely want to hold on to and don't be prepared to turn around and make a quick profit. Again, these are places that are very often quite out of the way and have communities that are aging out, so to speak. In many of these communities, young people still leave and have been leaving for many years. And this is one of the reasons why you've seen a decline in the population, and why that there are so many places that are looking to try and revitalize the town, the city, the village that they are living in. It's not just Sicily. It's not just one place or another place. There are a number of locations, but you do find a lot of these villages that are taking part in these projects may end up being in Sicily, at least some of the ones that are more kind of promoted out there in the news. And this is also, I think, another little problem that we've seen, is that there's been a lot of hype in the news, and it gets people excited and, oh wow, this is an amazing opportunity. I'm not saying it's a negative opportunity. I'm not saying it's a bad opportunity, but I am saying that it is very important to look things in a very realistic way. One of the biggest problems that I've seen so far, and that I was talking about before, I think, again, the 2 points that I say that have really been accomplished or are being accomplished currently by these projects is, one, the revitalization of kind of the facades of these buildings and giving new life and street curb appeal to some of these places. And also, two, to stimulate a little bit of the economy. But I would say one of the concerns also that I've had over the years is that, generally speaking, when we're talking about these projects, that there will be maybe a singular or a couple of contractors that are approved by a village for these projects, that you have to use the company, the individual, the whoever, the whatever, that the village says is okay for this project. You can't just bring in your own team. You have to use the local guys there, which, on one hand, I very much understand. You want to put your money into the local economy, but at the same time, how's this individual or this company's work? How's this business? What's the quality of their work? So you're very locked into a very limited choice when you are also approaching these projects, and the ability to even compare and shop around in prices starts to become a bit tricky as well. But the biggest concern is the actual population growth and actually revitalizing the place, not just from a facelift, but actually having people there. Are they bringing people in who are bringing new life and breathing life into this place again? I would say that is something that I've yet to be able to find any online statistics and data publicly available. This is a factor which is very difficult to really see a centralized set of statistics and data. But from all of the blogs, Reddit posts, news stories, videos, YouTube channels that I've seen where people have been talking about these, one of the biggest concerns that's come from my side is that it seems as though a lot of individuals may not actually be purchasing these properties to live in them full time. I was under the impression at the beginning of when I was hearing about these projects that the individuals might actually be required to stay in their properties. This may or may not be the case. And for example, what was happening in Molise or certain regions where they were actually paying individuals, or towns where they were paying individuals to come and build a business or stay there or do whatever it was. In some of those cases, then that was a requirement. But in some of these cases, when we're talking about just purchasing a property, that wasn't necessarily the case. So it seems to me that it might be a little bit counterproductive that a lot of these projects are being purchased by individuals who have no interest or intention of living in them full time. It, to me, seems as though maybe it would have been a better choice to maybe in all cases require that any of these properties being sold would have to be lived in for X amount of time first, that it would have to be the individual's main residence. However, one of the other caveats to that is that purchasing property in Italy does not guarantee you the right to be able to stay in the nation. And there was a lot of interest from abroad for these projects. And so some of the individuals may have had a visa to stay in the country and actually reside in the country, but it's very possible that a lot actually didn't. However, what I've heard from my good friend Marco Permunian from ItalianCitizenshipassistance.com, the Italian attorney that I collaborate on the Italian Citizenship and Real Estate podcast with, by the way, this week we just hit 100 episodes. So I am very, very proud of that, at least on the real estate podcast. Last year, we hit 100 on the citizenship podcast. But anyway, different story for a different day. But definitely I am very proud of this accomplishment with my very good friend Marco. But one of the things that he was saying to me, that he's told me a number of times, as well as even on the podcast when we've spoken about purchasing property in Italy, is that while it may not actually guarantee you the ability to stay in the country, it actually can potentially look good on your application. So that's one thing that I would say is to take into consideration. So even to make a requirement that the person would have to live there, you're maybe going to be limiting the number of people who would actually be able to take part in these if you're not going to be able to provide them with some sort of visa. Because again, we're also talking about a local government with their local project versus national level entities that would have a say in whether the person can stay in the country to begin with or not. And even, for example, there was a story that I remember seeing a few months ago. I don't remember the news agency, but I just remember it was in one of these small villages in Italy, or it could have even been Musumelli, whatever. Anyway, doesn't matter which one. The thing was that this woman came from the US. She had Italian ancestry, and it happened, I think, to be in her ancestral hometown, which was really cool that it's allowing for individuals of Italian descent to be able to connect with their homeland. That, I think, is a beautiful thing, and that's something that I think really should be encouraged. The issue that I saw was that this individual didn't have children. Whether that really should play a factor or not, or whether that should be a problem, that's a whole different story. But again, when we're talking about revitalizing an area, I think it's important to maybe start thinking about families and bringing people who actually can repopulate the area and literally bring new life into the place. And it seems as though this individual only had the intention to stay there part-time throughout the year, maybe even just a few months per year. So practically speaking, is there really a difference in having an empty ruin versus having an empty home? Granted, one looks a lot nicer and is a lot more pleasant when you're walking through the streets. But when we're talking again about revitalization and reviving the town, we're talking about more than just a facade. We're talking about actually people. The other thing, though, that I found very interesting, which kind of makes me wonder also a little bit more, it's a very nice gesture, but this individual spending 500,000 or whatever, a few €100,000 at least on this property that they've rebuilt and modified. When they finally pass, they'll be leaving the property to the village. They'll be leaving it to the city hall. So again, this makes me wonder, is that going to create the issue? Is that going to perpetuate this issue even more? That it's like, wait, hold on. We're talking about bringing people here and bringing more life into this place, but we're also looking at individuals who are maybe kind of at a latter stage where they're looking at retirement. And it seems to be, again, not bringing in the young, vibrant generation of people who are looking to make a home and build there. There may be individuals who've already had their lives, who've already built what they were going to build. Not in a physical sense like a home, but building their lives, building the foundations for maybe the next generation or something to build on top of, a business or whatever it may be. Not to say that that's the only thing that a person is good for in life. But again, I keep repeating myself. We're talking about rejuvenation. We're talking about bringing life back into these places. Because this is also the thing. Like I said, this individual had invested hundreds of thousands of euros, if I'm not mistaken. And when we're talking about the purchase price of a lot of these properties in these €1 homes, when we're talking about, say, if you're getting all in at maybe 20,000, even 15,000, but let's say 20 to 30,000. Say you're even doubling your project. I read another news article very recently. Again, I don't remember where, but the individual had said that they had purchased 2 homes and wanted to join them together and wanted to keep the budget up to 20,000 euros. Now, a number of years later, they're 35,000 euros deep and hope that the cap will be at 40,000 euros. I mean, like, when we're talking about doing renovation projects, things rarely ever go to plan 100%. So getting to the point where you've literally doubled your budget when you're in the tens of thousands of euros, that's significant. And for those who are looking to live in Italy, you can buy an apartment that's actually ready to move into for that amount of money. You might not be in Milan, Rome, or Florence, but you could be in an equivalent area that is a little bit further out, and maybe in the country, or maybe not even far from some of the major locations that might be of interest anyway. And even some of those places that maybe 20, 30, say 70,000 euros, we're talking about places that either are move-in ready or don't need much to get them ready. And unlike some of the places that you'll find with these €1 projects that may just be literally a heap of stones with no roof, some of these places that you can actually buy in other parts of the country not only will have all of their water and wiring ready to move in, but big feature here. This is the real kicker. Most of them, if not all of them, will actually have roofs too. Crazy idea, I know. But in all reality, is 10 years enough time to actually see if these projects will accomplish the goals that they set out to accomplish? I don't think so. I think realistically, it's going to take a lot longer. We are seeing already the accomplishment of the kind of facelift of some of these places, but breathing life back into these places, I think that's yet to be determined, and it will only be possible to see if that goal has been accomplished as time goes on. Anyway, I'm Rafael Di Furia. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter. Of course, thank you to those of you who like and share these episodes and are subscribed to the YouTube channel. But of course, an even bigger thank you to those of you who help to make this project possible on a monthly basis through rafaeldifuria.com/Patreon, patreon.com/RafaelDiFuria, and the one-time support through rafaeldifuria.com, as well as the thanks button here on YouTube. I'm Rafael Di Furia. This has been another episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter. Stay safe and healthy out there, and I'll see you all next time. Later.